Nitro Monkey Racer, no, Gamer. Nitro Monkey Gamer 500. I can't type your name to save my life, but this tutorial is for you. And you're gonna get the animated titles because you're the lucky winner, you know. And that's what happens when you watch my channel. You know, I make you stuff. Basically, I do your homework for you. No, I don't do that. So I do want to show you guys what I learned about particles. How to make realistic looking fire and smoke and sparks and embers. And you don't have to install some third-party plugin either. I'm not going to mention some names, but I think the stuff that comes with After Effects is great if you know how to use it. And I wanted to learn how to use it, so I just played around with it. And let's go ahead and explain what's going on here. Imported a JPEG, put it into a new comp. I select the layer, start drawing on it to make masks. The first mask is set to add, the rest are set to subtract. And if you select all the masks, you can adjust the settings and it will affect all of the masks. If you just adjust one of the mask settings with them all selected, and I'm going to animate it to race across from right to left. Yeah, and to get it to start slow and end fast, you have to ease the initial starting point in the position. I haven't found a way to use the graph editor for position very well. So that's my solution there. Now I'm adding a new solid with the CC Particle Systems 2. And I'm going to parent the producer to the car's position. That way it follows the car, and that's going to give me a good head start on using these settings. And I think a good way to, I guess, use this is to learn what each setting does, and then you know when to use it. So to make fire, for instance, I know I want some lines, and I know I want them to stretch. I know I don't want them to trail that long, so I adjust the longevity of each of the particles. The shape of the producer is fine. The fire preset gets me a good start, and so I found out how to trail the lines there using the inherent velocity. And what that means is it's kind of like inertia. It's the whether or not they'll trail behind or kind of ahead of the movement of the producer. Gravity is self-explanatory. 0 means it doesn't fall down or float up. Resistance, the greater the resistance, the more it tends to stand still. Velocity spreads it out from the producer. Now here I'm making smoke, so I go ahead and make it look like smoke with faded sphere for the particle type. Give it the color I want and set the transfer mode to composite right underneath the dark or the death color there. A good death size is 5, and you want a small burst size and a large death size. Smoke is supposed to linger, so I increase the longevity. I set the animation to explosive, it spreads out more. Give it more spread with velocity. Inherent velocity is of a negative value, means it's going to trail back a little bit. Take the gravity down to 0. Give it more resistance so that the smoke will kind of come to a standstill. Add a turbulent displace. This is where you can give it more of a fractal noise. Using that complexity setting of 4 or higher will get you a good result. needs to be more full, so it needs more particles at birth, or more birth rate or whatever. And I need to animate it so that it stops producing particles at the end of the animation. And I'm going to use a keyframe interpolation called hold. So the first keyframe will hold at 20 particles per second, or however many that's measured, and then it will not transition to the next keyframe. It will keep it at 20 and then drop it immediately at the next keyframe. Okay, so I pre-compositioned my racer and my fire and smoke and just made that a pre-comp called racer. Now I'm giving it a title. Moving on to the next phase of this animation. There's a lot of colors that you might need to use here, so 8 bits per channel might not cut it. I went to 16 bits per channel. You'll see that at the bottom of your project panel. It'll say 8 BPC. Just alt-click that to switch it. So after I made my text, I make a new shape layer, a rectangle. Just double-click on the rectangle tool to make it the size of the comp, and then shrink it down. Add a checkerboard effect, and then I gave it a Gaussian blur. Duplicate the text layer to make a shadow text and a foreground text. The shadow text I turned black, and I pre-comped it with the flag. And then I show the timeline so I can pick whip the transform properties from the shadow to the foreground so that one follows the other. This way the shadow can distort with the flag when I'm about to add that effect to the pre-comp. So I'd already made some animation for that text before I duplicated it. Now the shadow text has those keyframes and I just need to delete those. Alt-click the stopwatch by position and pick whip it over. And then I need to add something, so I want it to offset a little bit, so I add plus, and then in brackets an X value and a Y value to offset it. So 10, 50. The rest don't need to be offset, so I'll click them and drag them over. Back in the animated logo pre-comp, I just add a new layer, solid, call it displacement map, and add a fractal noise to it. Subscaling gives it a blur. Transform, scale it up. Alt-click the offset turbulence, and I add this expression, position O times time divided by 2. So take the X position and move it along. Then I'm going to add the displacement map effect to the flag and shadow pre-comp and set it to that displacement map that I created. Make sure effects and masks are set. I also give it a Gaussian blur of 10 pixels. I'm going to pre-comp all that to be my logo. And I get an error message, so you can click on the magnifying icon in that orange banner to find it. The FG text is no longer in a pre-comp called animated logo racer. It's just logo, so I need to update that. So that's working now. Now it's time to add some flames and sparks and stuff. But since I had a transparent background, I just gave it a new solid and animated the opacity for that to come on at some point so that I know that there's no transparency. I have an idea for my transition here. I want my logo pre-comp to have a mask that opens up from the inside, and I'm going to have a flame. So I'm making a new solid layer, calling it fire, and it's going to be kind of the frame around that mask opening up. Add a particle system like before, explosive, gravity to 0. For particles, I wanted this faded sphere. This is a flame, doesn't need to be very long, 1 second. But I do need that turbulent displace a complexity of 8, and then I give the evolution of an expression time times 300, I think, so it looks more animated. Needs more of a depth size and a size variation, and I'm using the transfer mode add to give it that brightness. Now I need to animate the birth rate. It needs to be 0 and then come over to 10 and then go back to 0. Time to duplicate that, rename it flames. So this will give me a little more variation. I used line, and with that turbulent displace, it makes those flames look pretty cool. Adjust the birth color. This rendering time was killing me. I'm going to duplicate my flames and make sparks. Get rid of that displacement, turbulent displace. Change the particle to motion polygon. These are going to be my sparks. I want them to last a long time, and I need to change their birth color, animation type. Some of these settings I'm not really sure of, so I'm going back and forth, but I know that I need to adjust the timing of the birth rate. So I'm just dragging keyframes around. I should have brought up the resistance to keep them on screen, but just kind of slowing down a little bit. So that's after I got it right. I gave an expression to direction because that allows them to spin around a little more chaotically. Now I'm adjusting my animation for the logo pre-comp so that the mask is expanding at the right moment and at the right amount. In this video I made use of the snowfall effect to get floating embers. With the right settings you can make it look pretty good, but you can't adjust a death color and birth color, and I wanted to do that. I ended up using the particles again with the animation set to directional, and I increased the Y value of the producer and moved it off to the side, the left side. But this is just using CC Snowfall, and I think it looks pretty decent. Thank you for watching once again. I don't have a catchphrase, but I'll see you later.